Welcome back to the Reflection Podcast. I'm Ed Blonski. Thanks for joining me today. New format in the middle of the season. Actually, we're coming to the end of season 3, and today's episode, we're going to revisit Pastor Ryan Ferguson. It was just a little over a year ago that Ryan was married and also ordained into the pastoral ministry. And the first episode of season 1 of the Reflection Podcast, we had an introduction to Ryan, who he is and what he had been doing up to that point in his life. Well, he's been at it for a year now as the associate pastor of St. Matthew, where I serve as lead pastor. And so I had Ryan come back and talk with us about his year of ministry and his first year as husband to Bethany. So sit back and relax and enjoy our reintroduction to Pastor Ryan Ferguson on this episode of the Reflection Podcast. In the pastor's office with me in a little bit different format now is Pastor Ryan Ferguson. This is Ryan's second time on the Reflection Podcast, coming back after a year of being a pastor, being a husband, out of the seminary and now in the so-called real world. So I wanted to get a little follow-up with Ryan. Why don't you give us a brief reintroduction, who you were, where you are up until June of last year.
So I'm Ryan Ferguson. I'm originally from Southern California, so the easiest way to find me on the map is if you find Palm Springs, I'm on the other side of the mountains in the low desert. So it's extremely hot there right now. Graduated from Concordia Seminary in May and started here in July.
And you went to undergrad where?
I went to Concordia Irvine.
Concordia Irvine, or as we in the Concordia system call it, Concordia by the Sea. So, because it's on the beach, pretty much, for the most part.
About 20 minutes from the beach.
Yep, and it's a little bit south of LA there. And nice part of the world, pretty part of the world. So two major events in the last year. You got married to your beautiful wife, Bethany, and you were ordained into the pastoral ministry. So let's take that one at a time. First, I want to, because you hit your 1-year anniversary as a husband and wife, why don't you tell us about your first year of marriage and what were your expectations in looking ahead last May, last June, right before your wedding? This is what married life is like. What were some of your expectations?
I think one of my expectations was my wife had lived at home until we got married, and she'd always lived in that same area. She hadn't moved around like I have. So I was nervous getting married if she was going to like coming to Hawthorne Woods, if she was going to be like being married to a pastor, if she realized what she was getting into with being married to a pastor. But I was worried about that. But then I've seen how this past year she's taken it full on and she has been adjusted to it well. We still visit with her family, but she is not upset about it. She loves where she is right now. So I didn't have to worry about that expectation.
She lived pretty much her whole life in rural Michigan, in eastern Michigan, in the Thumb area, or just about the Thumb area near Saginaw. And so this isn't too much different. I mean, yeah, we are a little bit closer to the big city than she was in Michigan, but a lot of farm fields around, a lot of open spaces out here as well. And Bethany's been a wonderful blessing to us here. I know she is there nearly every Sunday morning, and she comes out, and when we greet the people after worship, she's there, as my wife is as well. And so the congregation knows Bethany pretty well, knows both of you pretty well. So you had your expectations. What was the reality? How did it work out this last year?
It worked out well. We just had to get used to being married, husband and wife, and just communicating, and then just trying to find the balance was another expectation I had. Because you hear horror stories from guys that are pastors that they put the ministry first and their wife second and their marriage suffered. And so I wanted to try and avoid that. And so I've tried to find that balance. I can't say that I have 100%, but I think it's pretty decent for a first year marriage.
I think so as well. I'm looking at this and many other people as well after 33 years of marriage. So I've been at this for a little bit longer. But were those expectations met, or did reality kind of What were some of the things that maybe you didn't expect that happened in marriage, that first year of marriage?
I knew we were gonna have to buy a lot of stuff because she lived with her parents and I lived in a dorm for 6 or 7 years, but I wasn't expecting all that we had to buy in the first year of marriage: a couch, a TV. I'm like, holy smokes! We basically had to furnish a house.
And we did give you a house to
Yeah.
furnish here at St. Matthew. Pastor Ryan lives in the parsonage, and it's probably a little bit more than you need.
Yeah, that was way more than we need because I'd lived in a dorm about the size of your office, and she'd lived in her room, and I was like, wow, this is all ours.
5 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Got an office in it, kitchen, dining room, living room, and a full basement underneath the entire house as well. So you got a lot of room to play around in,
Yeah.
and of course you share it not just with your wife, and not talking about children so much, but who's sharing the house with you?
So we have the two cats that my wife had when we got married, and then I floated to my wife that I'd like to get a bunny because I always had bunnies growing up. And so Labor Day weekend, she's on the internet searching, and you can't buy bunnies at pet stores anymore. You have to adopt them from shelters. And my favorite superhero is Batman. So she literally went on the animal shelter, PetSmart Charities, and she was looking at it. She's like, "Oh, there's a little black one named Batman." I'm like, "Oh, really?" I took the phone, I filled out the application, and St. Matthew had to say yes, I was allowed to have a rabbit. But yeah, we have the two cats and the rabbit. So
Well, you have a full house then.
yeah.
Good for you. So that's your first year of marriage. Now let's talk a little bit about your first year of being a pastor. What were some of your expectations going through maybe college, but also seminary and then you also did an internship. What were the expectations given to you? Question.
I'm like, the expectations I had, I pretty much am doing
Okay.
what I was expecting. Yeah.
So what's the reality? What are you doing?
So I'm the associate pastor. So I do home visits, I do hospital visits, I lead worship, I preach, I do Bible study, new member class. Uh, Pretty much involved in anything here at the church.
That's one of the things, and uh, full disclosure, I'm the lead pastor at St. Matthew, so you kind of answered to me, but I wanted to make sure that you had the full experience. So I basically dumped you into everything.
Mm-hmm.
You go to certain board meetings, you lead a Bible study, you're writing Bible studies, which I want to talk about in a little bit. Bible studies, and you're preaching pretty much every other week at the most, or at the very minimum. And then when we go out on our vacations, we fill in the gaps there as well. And you've been preaching, I think, the last 2 weekends, and that's been a great thing. Anything that exceeded your expectations that kind of surprised you about being a pastor?
Yeah, you hear horror stories in the seminary about you get that first call as a young pastor, and the congregation, you get there and they love you at first, and then they just chew you up and they spit you out, and you just end up leaving the ministry because of that experience. And I have not had that here at St. Matthew. This congregation has been very grateful, very just a great first congregation to serve. They love to see me and hear from me, and they keep up with what's going on in my life.
Right. St. Matthew is a very loving congregation. They've had a lot of experience with pastors, being a congregation um, well over 150 years old. So they've had several pastors in their history, and they've had all kinds of different guys as well. They have second career pastors, pastors straight out of the seminary like yourself, and they do take care of their own. They're very family orientated ministry, and it's been a blessing for me being here now over 13 years. You being here a year, you're getting that same experience. I'm hoping, at least, with them. They are very loving, and they do care. Um, they want to take care of you. They want to take care of both of us as well, and they do a pretty good job about that as well. So let's get into some of the things, the minutia of what you've been doing over the last year. I want to start with Bible studies. That's something that sometimes catches pastors by surprise. They know they're going to be teaching Bible studies, but you're actually teaching us very specific orientated Bible study and then general Sunday morning Bible study. Let's talk about the Sunday morning Bible studies. What have you been doing in this last year? What kind of Bible studies?
So when I first got here last fall, we were doing the book of Revelation, and I had just that was the last course I took at seminary before I walked out. And so for the first couple sessions, I was like, I don't need to really prepare that much for it because I know this. I just finished studying this. And I learned very quickly that no, I have to put in the work that I do. So
they do love, and you'll find that in a lot of churches, they love to study the Bible. And Revelation was one I don't know why. People love the book of Revelation, probably because it's so mysterious, but they may also seem like it's being played out right in front of our eyes as well. And you also teach the men's Bible study. So let's talk a little bit about your men's Bible study.
So if we finished up Galatians last fall, and then we did a study, Growing Older, Growing Wiser. It was a book I bought off of Amazon. It was okay, but it kind of got repetitive because basically the entire message was, as we grow older, we need to grow wiser in the ways of God and not of the world. So by the end, we all got that.
You get the idea, right?
But then I asked the men once we were done with that what they wanted to do, and we jumped into the book of Ezekiel. And so we went through that last year. We're through the first 5 or 6 chapters, and we'll pick that back up in September. So
I think you'll find that, especially with a smaller group Bible study like that, our men's Bible study, maybe 6, maybe 10 guys at a time. They take their time.
We'll go through a chapter of Ezekiel in it takes us about 2 weeks to go through a chapter because they ask.
You're zooming through it.
No, they ask really good questions, and the thing that I always tell them is historical context. If we're going to study Ezekiel, we need to set him in his historical context. Right. So, and then I told them if after we're done with Ezekiel, if we want to jump into like a Daniel or someone said at the same time, we don't have to do all the groundwork that we did when we first started. So
yeah, I think that one of the things you'll find in Bible studies is so much like with the Revelation Bible study as well. A lot of that is so relevant, and so it's just today. Even though Ezekiel is 500-600 years before the birth of Christ. So sermons. What'd you find out about preaching? Because you're doing a lot more of it now, I think.
Yeah. So as a vicar, I preached once a month. As a field worker student, I preached maybe 3 or 4 times a year. But yeah, I got here and it's like, okay, you're preaching every other Sunday. I'm like, whoa. And I was nervous at first, but after a year of preaching, I've gotten a lot more comfortable, and I'm realizing I don't have to stick as strict to what they've taught me in seminary. I don't want to wander all the way from it, but I don't have to follow all the outlines that they gave me. So,
what did you find? What surprised you about preaching?
Just all the work I knew you did the work when I was a vicar. I did it, but I had like 3 weeks to do sermon prep. Now I have maybe a couple of days. I try to close it into a couple of days, and just all the different things I can use for sermon prep. But there are times when I'll read the passage and God will just, okay, this is what I'm going to preach on. I don't need any of the extra help. So
have you found, has it been your experience where you've prepared a sermon, you're ready to go, and then something happens the night before and you had to change it right away?
I haven't had that in my first year yet.
Lucky you.
I'm getting ready. I'm waiting for it to happen now.
It happened to me, I think, before you came. We had the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, the school shooting, and I had preached on a Thursday night, and then the shooting happened Friday, and I completely turned my sermon around by Sunday morning. So I know that you learned how to preach from Dale Maier, former speaker of the Lutheran Hour, former president of the seminary, and he is fond of saying, preach with the Bible in one hand
and the newspaper in the
other hand, because you're preaching not just giving God's word to people, which you certainly are, but where they are in their situation, in their life, right where they are. And so you've got to bring in, and so the news of the day. And I know that at this time of year, as we're recording this, and in the middle of August, and it's getting to the point where the election is heating up big time, that's going to probably be something that we're going to have to cover as well, at least in our messages and our sermons. What are some of the other details in being a pastor? You talked about shut-in visits and funerals. I don't think you've had a wedding yet.
No, I have a wedding coming up in November.
November is your first wedding, so you are dealing with the couple.
Going through premarital counseling.
So what do you use for premarital counseling, being only married for a year yourself? I would imagine you're probably using some kind of resource.
Yeah, we're using the Symbis, the Saving Your Marriage Before it begins or starts. And it's interesting looking at the couple Symbis and then looking at my own and Bethany's, and I'm like, wow, they're very similar, or wow, they're very different.
You
So,
went through it yourself.
yeah,
That's very helpful, I would imagine. So
yeah. And I didn't, when I did it, because I was exposed to it in seminary, I didn't stack the deck in my favor of answering a certain way because I'm like, oh, this will look real good for the pastor. I answered it completely honest.
oh,
So
that's what you're supposed to do. That's good. You've done a couple funerals.
a number of
How
funerals.
does what surprised you about that, or what were your reactions to that?
My reaction when I first got here was we just had a rash of funerals, like one after another. Every other week we seemed to have one. And then there was a point where I met a lady once for about 10 minutes and then she passed away. And that was the first time I did it on my own. And I remember the advice you gave me, just tell them about Jesus. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, it gets, as you're going to find out, and those who've been pastors a long time, maybe watching this, find out, it gets both easier because you know the people a little bit better, but it also gets harder because you know the people better. You know, you're burying friends now. These are family members that are you're doing a funeral for. So it gets easier, it gets harder at the same time. But yeah, that was advice given to me early on. Is just talk about Jesus. The families are expecting to hear a eulogy, talking about how good the person they were and what kind of life they're in, and how good a father and husband or wife or grandparent they were. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You want to have happy memories of them, but ultimately it's about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. Shed-in visits. You've done a lot of them because we do have a lot of them, and they're the whole spectrum of them. Anything surprise you there?
Just the joy and excitement that people have to see the pastor come in. It's not like, oh, it's the young associate pastor. Oh, he's not good enough. They're like, oh, pastor's here. Oh, he has communion. They're excited to see me. So
everybody was that excited to see us.
But yeah, I love visiting people because it's one thing to visit me in my office because it's my area, but to go visit someone in their home and to hear what's going on in their life and to think, okay, this is what they need to hear from God's word. That's what I really love to do. I just have to be careful because visits can eat up a big chunk of my time. So I'm learning the time management portion.
And we drive quite a distance for some of our shed-in visits, homebound visits, and you never really know what you're going to walk into, especially when you do it the first time. But we have the whole gamut of they're at home, homebound, or they're in a nursing home, or they're in a memory care unit. And then we also do special worship services at facilities. We do 2 a month, and you work. So the one of them you don't do any music at all with, and the other one you actually have a musician come in. And so, tell me about a little bit about that. What do you like better?
I like both of them. I like both of them because it gives me a chance to, if I'm working on a sermon idea, I haven't preached it, I can share it with them, or I can reuse a sermon from a previous Sunday. But it gives me a chance to talk in front of people again and get to meet new people. So,
and the turnaround is quite high, as you might expect, especially in a nursing home. There's new people every month. All right, so overall, you've been a pastor for a year, you've been a husband for a year. What surprised you about being a pastor?
Nothing really. So I was prepared very well in the seminary. Like, this is what you were. I think I'm a little surprised because we were always warned in seminary that less and less people read the Bible and they know God's word. But I come to St. Matthew and most people here, they know the Bible. Some people know the Book of Concord. So I'm like, well, I don't have to worry about doing that part. So just.
You teach confirmation classes to young children, 7th graders. Anything about that surprising you from your own experience going through confirmation, however long ago, 20 years ago?
I really enjoy teaching confirmation, like teaching the second article of the creed and telling them about Jesus and then getting them prepared for the Lord's Supper. I had a good group of kids my first year. There were 4 kids. So great questions. They used to interact with me. So, and we just walked through the catechism. They'd ask some really great questions. I really enjoy teaching the faith to the confirmation kids, to the adults that we have in our new member class.
Well, we'll see how well you did, because I get them now for third year confirmation, getting them ready for the rite of confirmation. My experience on that this last year was a little bit different, is that I had twice as many kids, but they didn't talk at all. Mostly because these are the COVID kids.
Mm-hmm.
They went through basically almost half of their elementary schooling via Zoom because of COVID, and that kind of, it really messed with a lot of people, that they don't really know what to ask, and how to do that. But it's been a joy, has been a joy, and the kids are really great, and they did a great job, and I'm sure that you've done a great job with them as well. Now, we are pastors in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that with you, about what might be next. What might you be thinking about in the future? Not that, now that you've been here a year and you're going to put 2 more years in and then you're going to leave us, type of thing. I want to get that. But what might you be looking forward to in the district and the synod, and doing things for them?
So in March of next year, I get to go, or the church has asked me to go to the district convention, and it'll be interesting because I took polity, how we operate as a body, in college, but I don't remember it very well. But you learn it one way, and I'll get to see it firsthand how we truly operate. So that will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I've been the delegate for many years to the district convention, and I thought, time's up for me. It's time to let the young guy take care of it. But you do need to be exposed to that and how it works, and hopefully you'll know your Robert's Rules of Order, because there's a parliamentarian, and they're very structured. But it is, well, for a lot of people, it might be a necessary evil on how the synod and the district works, but it's organized, and that's very important as well. But it is also Christ-centered, and you'll find that out, that it's all about that. Now, we are also part of a circuit of churches in the Northern Illinois district, and there's 8 or 9 of us pastors in this circuit. How did you weren't so, I mean, you were on a staff on your vicarage year, in it, doing your internship, but maybe describe for us how the circuit gets together, what we call a winkle.
We get together once a month. We have a time of worship and communion, and then we have some kind of study, whether it's a Bible study or a topical study or something. And then we just go around and we share what's going on in our ministry.
So what might be you looking out ahead, that beyond pastoral ministry? You'll be a pastor for a long time, God willing. What else might you want to do to expand your pastoral ministry, your career?
I'm thought about going back to get another degree, but I'm not 100% sure if I want to go that route. So
a lot of guys think about it at the beginning of their first year, and then realize, I haven't had to go to class in a long time. I like this.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So
the other option I've been thinking about since I was in seminary was military chaplaincy, but there's a lot of stuff I have to figure out before I run through the door, as I say. So the door's not closed because I'm in my second year, so I would just be going through the paperwork, but we'll just see where the Lord leads me.
Absolutely. Chaplaincy, very important ministry. I've known several chaplains as friends, and they are a vital resource that the church has to reach out to the men and women that serve in our armed forces, and other areas of chaplaincy, firefighter chaplains, police chaplains, things like that. Very important as well. Now, as you can probably tell, I love to read. This is just a portion of my library here in my office, but I'm interested in finding out, what have you been reading over the last year?
By this time last year when we recorded, I was finishing up A Skeleton in God's Closet by Paul Maier. That was a great book. Yes. I couldn't put it down when I got towards the end. I was like, wait. I won't give away the ending, but it was really good. I finally finished Schindler's Ark, which is Schindler's List. I bought that when I was in seminary. I bought it digitally on my iPad. I finally finished reading that. That was really good. I finished Sacred Duty by Senator Tom Wood from Arkansas. Talks about his time at Arlington and about the history of Arlington Cemetery. That was a great book too. And then I'm starting to read More Than a Skeleton by Paul Maier, the second one in the series, because I read something very dramatic with the the senator about Arlington. So I want to have something more a little light, adventurous. So
Has that been because you like to read, or have you been using that in your preparations for Bible studies and stuff?
I was cautioned in seminary, you never want to go to like a movie, a book, and go, oh, I want to find my sermon illustration. I'm gonna look in here, because you more than likely won't find it. I do it because I like to read and I like to learn. The other book I want to read, my classmate sent me, he was my best man at my wedding, is A Watchmaker's Daughter about Corrie ten Boom. It's a more historical approach to her story during World War II. So,
and I would recommend also, if you're into that era, is to read the Bonhoeffer biography that I just finished by Eric Metaxas.
And then I picked up The Diary of Anne Frank. I finally got a copy. I haven't read that since high school. I'm like, I want to read that because that's one of the most powerful books I read when I was in high school. So I want to own it. Now I do.
We are at that age, I think, in history that we need to bring these back, because people are starting, well, that generation's going away quickly. And we need to never forget what they went through and what it meant to be even a Christian in that era as well. So there we go. We have a year with Pastor Ryan at St. Matthew. I appreciate you coming on again and giving us a recap of what's been going on.
Thank
so much.
you. Yeah.
Thanks, Pastor Ryan, for joining me today on the Reflection Podcast. If you would like to know more about St. Matthew, where we serve as pastors, you can email us at our website, and then check out our website as well. It is stmatts.net, stmatts.net. The Reflection Podcast is a production of St. Matthew Lutheran Church in Hawthorne Woods, Illinois. We are about 45 minutes from downtown Chicago in the northwest suburbs. And actually, we're only about a half hour's drive from O'Hare Airport. So if you happen to be in the Chicago area or flying in for a couple hours or maybe a couple days, you're invited to join us in person. Our worship services are indicated on our website, and we also have many other events that happen during the week here at St. Matthew. You are invited to all of them. All our worship services are also streamed live as they happen, as well as many of our Bible studies and other events. So check out our website, stmatts.net, stmatts.net. And I hope you'll go back and look at other episodes of the Reflection Podcast, and please rate this podcast wherever you get your episodes from. And also leave a positive review. That's always welcome. And share the podcast through your socials so that more and more people can see how God has called people to reflect His light and His love in this increasingly dark world. That's what the Reflection Podcast is all about. Again, thanks for joining me today, and join me again next time on the Reflection Podcast.